Welcome back, guys. If you're new here, welcome for your first time. We hope you visit many more times. A couple of days ago, I went by and hung out with Gary Dixon, K4MQG in Fort Mill, South Carolina. He's a big DX'er. He's been a ham a long time. He's an ARRL card checker. So if you've been at any of the ham fests around the Charlotte area, you've probably seen him set up at the ARRL table checking cards. As a member of the Carolina DX Association, and pretty much if you're in the DX world, you know who he is. You've heard of him. You've probably talked to him. He's worked every DXCC entity in the world, including North Korea. So he's been around a long time. His whole family's a ham. We get a little shack tour. We tell some stories, and he's just a heck of a guy just to talk to, and a great storyteller. Just a sweet guy. I don't know what else to say. I can't pump him up anymore. He's fantastic. If you don't like Gary Dixon, I don't know what to tell you. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, give it a like, and if you really like us, go ahead and hit that notification bell just to the right of the subscribe button. That really helps us out, and it's greatly appreciated. Thanks for coming by, and enjoy.
Brad, nice to have you over here at the Hamshack today. My name is Gary, K4 Mike, Quebec, George, K4MQG. Some people call me Mr. Quick Galvanize because I had a tower galvanized one time and it fell apart in the galvanizing pit because the tower was put together with aluminum rivets, but that's another story for another day. But I got my ticket in 1957. I'm still using the same call, K4MQG. I did have a secondary call years ago when the FCC allowed you to have a secondary call, but I got rid of that when I was told I had to get rid of one of them. Born down in the great state of Georgia, but lived in North Augusta, South Carolina most of my life. In 1970, I was transferred to Charlotte. I was with AT&T at the time and moved up here to Charlotte and stayed there 10 years and moved to famous Fort Mill, the ex-home of Jim and Tammy. Moved down here in 1980. My dad got me into the hobby. He always wanted to be a ham. I got my ticket. He didn't get his ticket until 1981 or 82. My son's a ham and my daughter-in-law's a ham, and I can't stand that. I've got to be a ham myself. So Dad, he bit the bullet and got down to it. He knew everything about it, just about, except the code. That's what stopped him in the beginning. But he got involved with the North Augusta Belvedere Amateur Radio Club and went through some of their classes and was finally able to pull a real ticket out. And he was KB4 DIX, short for Dixon. And pretty neat that he was able to get such a call. It's just a great hobby. My son, who's a ham, he's a corporate pilot for Charlotte Pipe and Foundry, and I love talking to him when he's in the airplane going somewhere in the United States, Central America, the Caribbean. His call is KA4HVI, keep alert for high voltage insulator. My wife's a ham, KA4WUR. That's keep alert for a woman using radio, and we have to watch out for her. It's been part of my life. My life.
How old were you when you first got licensed?
Like 14 or 15. I'd have to do some math, and I forgot how to do math. I'm so old. I think I was in the 9th grade when I got my license, my novice. It's been a part of my life. I got again 2 sons that are ham, and my wife is a ham. My dad was a ham. I've got a daughter-in-law that's a ham. So, you know, our life revolves around this great hobby of ham radio. From the moment I got my license, I was interested in DX. I loved shortwave listening. Before I ever got a license, I had great big radios, and Dad, being with the telephone company, had me some pretty sophisticated antennas. He had me a 7 or 8 mile long wire. He climbed up, being with the telephone company, he knew where all the good wires were, and he went up the pole in front of the house down in North Augusta back in the 50s and brought a pair of wires into the house, and man, did I have a great long wire.
So you had a beverage before having a beverage was cool.
Yeah, that beverage was probably in the neighborhood of 75 feet. But it went all directions.
Top of the pole.
It started on top of the pole in front of the house, and it went all over North Augusta. Ham radio itself has so many facets to it. You know, there's the rag chewing and CW. Everything about it is good. But I got bit by the DX bug. And from the very beginning, I've been involved in that part of the hobby. Played other parts of it, but just always loved the DXing and was probably never off the air during the last 63 or 64 years that I've been a ham. I've probably never been off the air really for more than a couple of weeks. And that's when I was in basic training down in Columbia, South Carolina. But in the shack every day. I don't necessarily make a contact every day, but I'm in here doing some listening, or if I find something on the band I want to talk to, you know, I do a lot of listening too. My first radio, the receiver was a National NC88, and the first transmitter was a Globe Chief, a WRL Globe Chief, made in Council Bluffs, Iowa. I built that as a kit. I built that in 1956. It was a Christmas present from my mother and dad. I did not even have my license when I got it. My license came in a couple of weeks after Christmas, but my first big antenna was I had a rotary dipole made out of 2 pieces of 10-foot EMT, aluminum EMT, and that thing was up 20 feet. Man, that's when propagation was so good. You could just work the world with small power and not much aluminum or not much copper. It's a totally different world today. It takes a lot of watts and a lot of propagation, a lot of good antennas to work even DX on 10 or 12 meters. But just before talking to you, before you came in today, I'd worked an African and a European on 12 meters, which was kind of unusual. I didn't expect to hear anything, but I just decided to listen for the day. And I was on low power. I think the output of the 756 Pro 2 runs about 90 watts. One of the best radios I think I ever had, believe it or not, was a Heathkit SB102 and a wonderful QTH that I had when I lived in Charlotte. I lived in Charlotte from 1970 to 1980. In fact, I was the first person in the United States to work and confirm 5-band worked all zones. And I did that with a Heathkit SB102 with a remote VFO. I had a 56-foot self-supporting towers with 10, 15, and 20-meter monobanders. Only thing I had for 80 was 3 quarter-wave slopers, and on 40 I had just a half-wave dipole. But I used those antennas partially as guys, because I think I always considered I had the tower overloaded because of the height of the monobanders being stacked. I made my quarter wave slopers and used the tower as the other half of the antenna, and boy, did that work. If I could go back to the same conditions, the same propagation that we had during the 70s, I would go back to my old Heathkit radio and my old 56-foot tower and my quarter wave antennas. I could work the world all the time with those antennas. They were simple, but propagation was the art of making DX possible. In fact, I can remember during that period of time in the early 70s, I had probably up to 6 transceivers that I bought from Tenny Freck over in Asheville when he was in business. He was a friend of mine. He was a W4, but he was on Bahrain Island, and he needed to use these real sophisticated transceivers over there, something to do with the marine business. And I would buy these multi-$1,000 radios from Freck and keep them for 2 or 3 months to make sure they were really burned in and working. And then they would go to Bahrain Island. And I would buy 3 or 4 of them a year and make sure they were solid before I shipped them out of the United States. But my Heathkit radio always heard better than those multi-$1,000 radios. About every 6 months, I would take that radio apart and spray all the contacts with a contact cleaner, and 10 meters would come alive when I would do that. But that was my best radio. The equipment I use currently is a Icom 756 Pro 2. I'm using that transceiver. I like the way it operates. I like the split frequency. I have a couple of Icom 1000, an Alpha 8410. I used to have a great antenna. In fact, I have a picture of it up here. Here's a picture of an 80 and 40 meter beam. I don't have the 40 meter. The 40 meter beam is up and working great today, but I took the 80 meter beam down because I'd worked every country in the world except North Korea and the Andaman Islands. I had not worked those 2 countries, and Scarborough Reef.
He had an 80 meter beam, 2 elements on 80 meters. Who in the hell has that? Who's got a tower that can hold it? Who's got a yard big enough? Jeez, let's get back.
There's 3 countries that I have not worked on 75 meters. And the antenna quit working a few years ago, and finally took it down. And
that was here?
Yeah, it was at this.
You had a 2-element 80 meter beam here.
At this house.
At how high?
115 feet. But it was also on a hill with a nice drop off.
What did that antenna weigh?
150 pounds. It was a commercial beam made by Create in Japan. And I bought it right after Hurricane Hugo because it almost came down. Another ham up in Lincolnton, North Carolina owned that. The tower he had it on, he had it 150 feet on 25G, and it was guyed about every 10 feet. I have never seen so many guy wires in all my life on a tower. Well, it was turning with a prop pitch. I mean, the wind didn't bother it. I've seen the elements bent back pretty good in wind, but several times I had that antenna up for probably 12, 14 years, but many winters that would get ISO'd it, and I've literally seen the beam look like a U-boat. The tips were pointing straight down because they were covered in ice. But as soon as it would warm up, the elements would straighten out and it would come back. I never had any damage to it.
And your wife had no problem with this at all?
Absolutely not.
So what's up there now?
Just the 40 meter beam on that tower. I have another tower that has a Mosley PRO57b and a 6 meter beam on it. But the great part about the 80 meter antenna, and we were talking about 30 meters from that amplifier, quite by accident one day I discovered that beam worked 30 meters. I had a 30 meter dipole, and I was QSYing from 80 to 30 one morning back years ago, and I realized when I loaded up the transceiver, I said, boy, something must have changed. My SWR is great, and I'm hearing so much better. Come to find out, I forgot to throw the switch from the 80 meter beam to the 30 meter dipole. And all of a sudden, I was receiving on 30 with the 80 meter Yagi. SWR was flat. I can tell you, it was awesome. To have a 2-element 30 meter beam at 115 feet was pretty rich. We're talking about antennas. That 80 meter Yagi was a wonderful, wonderful antenna. I didn't stand in line.
You're now the big boy on 80 meters.
I'm not anymore, but I did not stand in line on 80 meters with that antenna when it was up, isn't it? There's nothing left. There are no.
Worked it all.
I've worked them all. I worked North Korea on 10, 15, and 20 meters sideband. I worked them all except North Korea on CW. I do not have North Korea on CW, and only one or two people in the States. I say one. There might be 3 or 4, but they were all prearranged. But when Marty OH2BH did have a license for a short period of time and got on, and I think they were prearranged SCED with a couple of guys in the West Coast, a couple of guys in the Philippines that he worked, and that was okay. He put his buddies up first rather than just getting on there and calling CQ, and I can't blame him for that. I probably would have done the same. I just got on LOTW this year. All my DXCC confirmations from the past are all a paper card. I don't know if it's visible or not from where I am, but you open these drawers over here, and I got thousands of QSL cards over here that are all separated by a country, the ARRL country list. So I've got quite an investment
Just in postage.
Just in postage, in cards. The worst part of this hobby is losing my friends. I have lost so many good personal friends that were hams. And just in the last 2 or 3 years around Charlotte, there's a DX bulletin that I subscribe to. Every day they have a silent key section. And I look at that usually every day to see if I know somebody. But it's been hard with the number of personal friends in the South Carolina, North Carolina area that I know that I've lost that are club members, and I don't even want to name them, but gosh, we've lost a lot of good friends.
Now, I was at Gary's house for about 4 hours, and I got over 2 hours of footage. I was taking some time to edit some of that down just for this one. There will be more. We got a couple of stories he told that were just fantastic, and I want to get those in. So on the next episode, we're going to continue more with Gary, K4MQG, and you're going to be entertained. It's real good stuff. Thanks for stopping by. Hopefully we'll see you again. We'll get another video out very soon. See you guys.